Three, two, one. Welcome back to season two or season 1.5. We dropped off a little bit there. The 615 Locker Room Podcast. Um, I just want to say, sorry that we did kind of fall off last season. We both went through some major life changes, and we realized that we didn't want to do the show. We couldn't do it 100%, so we stepped back, and now we're back at it, and we are devoted to bringing a good show for the rest of the season and bringing all Nashville sports. Today, we're going to focus on Nashville SC mainly. The MLS season starts back in 1 week. I believe I think by the time this comes out, it might be tomorrow that we play the first round against, I think it's Atletico Ottawa is kind of the name. Ottawa, I don't know how to say the Canadian names, they're not real. Um, so we play them in the first round, and then we face the inevitable Miami if we get past them. So that's the season coming up in the next few days. But I want to take a step back. By the way, I'm your host, Wormy, with co-host Uncle Matt or Matt. It's been a while since we've both done this, so it's a little rusty. But we want to take a look at last season. We didn't give to do a proper breakdown or review of it, uh, and kind of give our grades, our thoughts, what we're looking forward to in this upcoming season. So Matt, I want to start off by asking you what you thought of last season and what grade you would give it.
Yeah, it's kind of it was a really good season. I mean, I think anytime you don't finish, in the top spot or kind of go out without a bang the way we did, it kind of leaves a little sour taste in your mouth. But I mean, I'd say it's a solid like A- season. We won the first cup in club history, taking home the U.S. Open Cup. Uh, you know, solid season overall. Lost a little steam down the stretch, but I think getting the draw of having to play Miami like 5 times in the last 7 matches is something that would have probably done any team in. I mean, you look at what they did running through the playoffs. There was not much competition for them, so it wasn't like we were the only ones kind of getting the bad end of the stick from them. So, but yeah, like I said, overall pretty good. I mean, it was fun to be at Geodes Park, fun to watch the away matches. We played like the most attractive soccer we've played in our club's history. I would say lots of goals, lots of attacking football. And to get the first cup, I mean, that's ultimately the goal of any sport is to win trophies. So to finally get one of those, finally put one in the cabinet, I don't know how you could ask for much more out of that season, especially because I think one of the big talking points, one of the things that people cover the team, that people that are a part of the team seem to be putting out there last year was supposed to be kind of phase one of like a rebuild. So to have a good season, get a cup, you know, kind of puts us a little bit ahead of schedule. I don't think that was necessarily what they had in mind, what they had planned for the season. So to have had the season we had, when we were kind of thinking it might be one step back to take 2 steps forward type of season, you can't complain too much about that.
Yeah, and I would agree completely. I think the way that most people would grade last season is kind of, I would say, really it depends on what you think about the postseason. Because the Miami playoffs, obviously, that first round getting knocked out, that's a pretty low grade. But we finished sixth in the East, which is I would say is a good standing for compared, especially to the Gary Ball standings. And then we also won a major competition with the U.S. Open Cup. So I think if I did remove bias, B plus or A minus, I would lean toward the A minus because the only thing that we didn't do was win the MLS Cup playoffs. We had a player in the running for Golden Boot all season. We went on I can't remember the exact number, but it was a club high score record for least losses in the season in a row, whatever. And we across the season we also broke a couple records either way. With all that being under a brand new head coach, brand new faces, with our midfield being Eddie Taxeth, Patrick Yazbek coming in the later half of the season before that, and then new pieces all around. So I think we can look back at last season fondly in the history of the club. First trophy, that's obviously going to be super important. Uh, so I think that's a fair rating to say that it was a good time with an A minus.
Yep, I'd put it right up there. 2020, 2021. Those are probably the two best seasons we had previously. So, and like you said, kind of eclipsed all the points records and goals scored and stuff like that. So, did it in a little more entertaining fashion. I mean, I know probably some people are like, well, we only finished sixth, but I mean, I think a part of that was like the Eastern Conference and MLS was insane last year. Like it was tooth and nail. Teams missed the playoffs that would have made the playoffs most years. So for us to finish sixth and have like one of our best seasons we ever had, that just tells you how good the conference as a whole was. So I think, you put that Nashville SC team into a different season, we could have easily been second or even, top of the table, supporter shield level. But the East was a dogfight last year.
And we also did all this with a back line that was trying to figure out what its identity was. We missed Zimmerman for a lot of the games, and then whenever he returned, obviously he wasn't to the highest playing that he is known for. So it was we had our ups and downs, but I think a majority of the season our players kind of grinded it out and still produced, and it was a great season to be a fan. It was entertaining, and it was also successful in production value, I'd say. Uh, so
Yeah,
at
I
the end of the
think what you
season,
said right. I think
mhm.
what you said right there, it was a great season to be a fan. I think that's a key point of why we'd probably give it a higher grade than maybe even some of the other seasons. I think even that 2021 season, that first 2020 inaugural season, that wasn't always the most pleasant soccer to watch. As good as we played those seasons, as the results, the standings that we had those seasons, I've always been a defender of Gary Smith. I'll go to my grave defending Gary Smith, but I can even admit, the last 12 months of Nashville SC soccer has been by far the most fun to watch in the club's history. So, like you said, a good season to be a fan of Nashville SC.
Yeah, it was just it was a fun time to watch. Um, so riding off some of that fun, let's go down in the slumps a little bit and talk about some of our departures that we had. I want to do a special kind of away from this segment shout out to Taylor Washington, who retired at the end of last season after suffering a injury that I guess was just they decided for the best for him not to come back, or that he wouldn't be able to come back in a form that was acceptable. But he is now sort of like a brand ambassador for the club while doing seminary school. I don't know if once he finishes that, if he's going to stay in that role or if he will continue. But I just want to give a special shout out. He's a great representative of the club as a whole, and he was he wasn't always the best player on the field, but he was always one of the most loved, I would say, a part of the roster. Um, it's a little funny side. I I will go onto like Nashville SC post now, and I'll see him like fighting people in the comments, and I'm like, this guy obviously has more time on his hand now. It's obvious that he loves the club, and so I think that that's a great place to be for a club ambassador. So I just want to give a special shout out to him.
Yeah, no doubt. He's the last remnant of the USL era of Nashville SC. Started with the team when we were in that league and carried over into MLS. So he's kind of a real end of a chapter for him to be retiring. It's kind of that last vestige of the pre MLS days gone. But I'm really happy that he's sticking around and in an ambassadorial role because he's to your point, like, it wasn't always the first name on the team sheet, didn't, play a whole heck of a lot of minutes, but it'd be hard to think of somebody that's represented the club better in our history than he has. So to have him continuing to do that in some capacity, I think is pretty cool. And I'm pretty excited to, see him kind of leading the cheers and being in the supporter section or whatever he's going to be doing coming into the season this year.
Um, Now talking about the other list, I think the biggest loss of the club was obviously Walker Zimmerman leaving. There's a running joke in your vlogs. I don't know how you're going to get your wife to any more games with you. You're going to have to really buy the best seats now that the handsome man is not there. But obviously he had that injury and then came back, didn't really return to form, and then so we couldn't come to terms. I don't know all the behind the scenes details. Maybe you know more because I think you are a little bit more tapped into like the articles and stuff that come out. But that's obviously a big change for Nashville SC because he's been one of the faces of our team for so long. So just do you have any thoughts on his departure?
Yeah, I mean, kind of similar to when Dax left the club a couple years ago. Just a linchpin guy. Obviously captain of the team. Took over that role from Dax. So just in and on and off the field, just a guy that's going to be hard to replace from that perspective. But I think just you see more and more the way BJ wants us to play a little bit of a higher line, a little bit more aggressive, a little bit better in possession. Needed probably a little bit more pace, a little more athleticism. He's a better suited for like the old style Gary Smith, kind of sit a little deeper type of defense. So much as we all love him, as much as we all would love to see him still being in gold on Saturdays, he became less of a fit tactically for the team as we move towards more of what BJ wanted to play. I don't know really what the story would have been with negotiations. I would imagine, in a perfect world, they probably would have liked to have him back, because even if you're shifting away from him as your captain and your starter, I mean, I can imagine he'd be a pretty solid guy to have on the bench. But with the cap restrictions and things like that, I know like Jack Myers taking up a pretty sizable hunk of our cap when it comes to center backs and stuff like that. So he probably was not going to get anywhere close to the money he deserves or the money that he could get elsewhere if he stayed here. He would have had to probably take a pretty big, quote unquote hometown discount to stay with us. And I think it was probably better for, it's one of those where it's like, it sucks, you're always going to hate it, but it's probably the best for both teams. We kind of bring in a new center back who may fit the BJ style a little bit better. He gets to go to Toronto, who's probably going to be playing a little bit more of the deep lying defense that suits him a little bit better. And I'm sure they probably gave him more money than we were able to give him. So hate to see it. I mean, in any sport, you want to see your guys kind of be on your team day one to the end of time. But, it just fortunately rarely works out like that in sports. Like I don't know if you've ever played Immaculate Grid. Every once in a while, like they'll have like only played for one team. And that's one of the hardest like ones to do, because there's so few people across sports who've only been one team, for their entire career. So we'll miss him. And like, I'm curious. I think, we'll probably get into it a little bit with the signings, but I know we've signed some people that look like should be able to step in and help cover the gap on the field. I think the big question is, off the field, or on off field and kind of on the field as well. Him as the captain, him as the leader, his experience, the veteran guy who's been on the U.S. national team. That's kind of where I see a bigger gap kind of left by him than maybe just as a pure center back kind of position. So be interesting to see how that goes. I feel like that's kind of took a little bit of us to kind of fill that gap with Dax, where we had players that came in, did the job on the field, but that kind of leadership, that other kind of undefinable quality, it took us a while to kind of have some other players step into that role when Dax left. So I think we're a more veteran team. We're a more experienced team now. So I think we have a better group that can kind of fill the gaps and step in. I don't even know if we've like officially announced. I would assume it's going to be Hani, but I don't know if we've even officially announced who the new captain is going to be with Walker departing. But I would assume it'd be Hani, because he kind of was the de facto captain when Walker was out with injury. So that would make the most sense to me. But I think, Surridge, Dan Lovitz, we've got a lot of experienced guys, good leaders in the team. So I think we'll have some guys that kind of rally and fill that role.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're pretty spot on with the probably Hani is going to be the new captain going forward, taking over. Yeah, I think the city will miss him, Zimmerman. But it was probably the best decision. As unfortunate as it was. Another really loved player that I saw a lot of people not happy with being traded away was Schaffelberg. He went to LAFC, and I think that's another one where everyone knew that he was struggling with the system, but it's just he was a loved player to the Nashville SC community. Heavy in the guys heavy in the branding are obviously going to be more supported by the fans off the pitch. So a lot of people were sad to see him go. I wasn't really surprised by it, and that's really all the thoughts I have on that. I was kind of expecting that move sooner or later. So what did you think whenever he got traded?
Yeah, I mean, to the same kind of extent of what we talked about with Walker. Anytime a fan favorite goes, it's going to be a tough pill to swallow. But to your point, I mean, it on the field for both parties makes the most sense. I mean, LAFC is going to play like a more direct, over the top kind of style that fits him really well, where he can use all of his skills a lot better than a kind of more possession based team that we're starting to form into. It's kind of funny. Like I've been listening to like a couple of the other National SC media outlets have like been talking with people from like fans and supporters from Atletico Ottawa, who you mentioned that we played tomorrow night at the time of recording, just to kind of be like, hey, what is your team? We don't know anything about you, to try to like, learn more about them. And like one of the things I've heard from like two different people on two different shows say, for like Atletico Ottawa fans, is like, we were so bummed when you guys traded Schaffelberg because we were looking forward to seeing a good old Canadian boy come up here and get to play in his hometown and everything like that. So they're as disappointed as we are. But I was kind of talking to my mom. She loved Jacob Schaffelberg, but I was kind of talking to her about it, and I was kind of keying in on some things when I was talking to her. And I think one of the reasons he became such a fan favorite is like we still have like a relatively new to soccer fan base, I would say. Like we've got a lot of people, here that have, like myself, that have grown up in the game and kind of know it pretty well. But then there's, like yourself, there's a lot of people that just saw the team, saw the play, and are like, I like this, I'm interested in this. And people just from the area, like my mom, she's just like, I'll support any national team. Like she watches every single Nashville sports team. No matter, she'll probably watch like Vandy women's bowling if it's on TV. She's that supportive of Nashville sports. But I think like for people that are new to soccer who aren't able to see like intricacies of they put a 20 passes together, that was pretty awesome, but they didn't score. He was just so fast that was something that was easily identifiable to people, where they could just see him and be like, fast, good, I like this guy. It was an easily identifiable thing. Like if you look at his underlying numbers, he was never like that productive. I think he only ever scored like maybe like 3 or 4 goals the most this season, handful of assists, but he always looked like he was going to do something because he could just get behind defenses. It was a very translatable skill to be like, look at how fast this dude is, I like this dude. But he's a good dude. I met him several times at like fan events and stuff like that, and I think that's one thing that we've had going for us as a club is we've had some really good guys in our team. And so like anytime you see somebody that like is a good dude, go, that's never fun. And he had some cool nicknames, the Maritime Messi, the Canadian Surfboard. I mean, those are fun replaces anything. We need some new cool nicknames in the team. But yeah, it's another one, like you said, it made sense probably for both parties. But, well-liked guy, a popular guy in the team. So there's always going to be a little bit of a sadness to that when somebody like that moves on.
Yeah, that is a very interesting kind of thing that I hadn't put together, of sort of like dangling gold chains in front of a baby, like shiny, good, and Schaffelberg was shiny with his quickness. So that's a cool insight. Now we're gonna fall under some less beloved players, I guess, less loved players. Brugman, obviously, he got shipped off, which I had saw multiple this kind of period of like some people were saying that he was happy in Nashville and really wanted to stay, and then others were like, well, the team is looking to trade him, which I think we just released him or denied his contract option. I don't think we really even got anything for him, and he became a free agent for a while and signed with an out of country team. I can't think of what it's called off the top of my head, but that was one where I think we kind of thought that we were getting something better, or at least I did. I heard, MLS Cup MVP or whatever the award was, and I was like, oh, this guy's going to come in and do something really good for us. And then I just felt like all season he was meh. He seemed disinterested on the field, in my opinion, until sort of those later games. He kind of started getting a fire under him, and maybe he would have continued that trend. But for me, I think freeing up his contract space was probably once again a good move, because I don't think he added much to our roster.
Yeah, I think he was kind of hurt by ultimately the formation that BJ played us in last season, where we were kind of more of a 4-2-2, 4-2-2 as opposed to like a 4-3-3. I think he would have been better suited in like a midfield three. Like if he could have played with Eddie and Patrick Yazbek. I think we did it a couple times, but not very often, where, they could do kind of the grinder work, run around, kind of cover all the space, and let him just kind of flow free and pick out pass and stuff like that. Probably would have worked out a little bit better, but ultimately, to get all our best players on the field at the same time, it led to us playing that formation, I'm trying to do the math here, 4-2-2-2, I think is what it was, where it was like 4 defense, 2 midfield, 2 kind of wing-esque players, and then 2 strikers. So he didn't suit that position very well, because that requires the 2 midfield players to do a lot of running, a lot of work, which is great when you got a Yazbek and an Eddie Tagset, but that just really wasn't his style of play. So the games where he played in the 2-man midfield, he didn't get to show his best stuff. and we only played a 3-man midfield a handful of times, I think, throughout the season. So he's a dude who, in a perfect world, I think he had some skills that could have done something for us, but just the stars, I don't think aligned
Mhm.
very much there. And I think that was probably one where when it was looking at possibly bringing it back for another season, looking at what they could do with the salary cap space, I think they just kind of felt like, hey, we saw this really wasn't a fit. It's probably better to reinvest this money somewhere else after one season. So it was like basically like a 1 season rental. I don't think we gave up too much to bring him in from LA. So it was kind of basically, I think we traded Sean Davis. So it was basically like, hey,
Yeah.
you take this contract we don't want. We'll take that contract that you guys need to do. So it's kind of a mutual thing between us and LA. Got a 1 year out of him and really didn't work out. So it's kind of a easy enough one to move off from and go in a different direction. And I think we'll get to it eventually, but I think we've done a pretty good job reinvesting the funds the way
Mhm.
we have this offseason.
Yeah, and that trade just really didn't work out for either team. I don't think
No.
Sean Davis suited up once. I think he like pretty much immediately got waived over there, and
Yeah.
I've been trying to follow along with him because he was another player where I like his personality, and I think he just
Mm-hmm.
went on to free agency and hasn't been picked up again. I did forget a player earlier. Tyler Boyd also went to LAFC. He joined
Mm-hmm.
Schaffelberg, and he was a player that I was really excited on. The few games that he did play, I thought he did a decent job. Um, gaining opportunities, but he obviously had the injury that put him out for a long time. And then as soon as he was healthy, I guess is whenever we would have made the trade. So it's one of those things where he just didn't get a ton of opportunity on our field. And he's kind of on the older side with a pretty rough injury. So it makes sense, but I was hoping to see a little bit more of what he could do. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, he was a player that when he came in, I thought he had a good chance to kind of be that third threat to kind of complement Hani and Sam, kind of give us that extra attacking threat that we really needed. And just injuries and other things got in the way. Obviously, the big injury that took him out for basically a year and a half was the huge one. But I think as the way the rosters come together now, um, he was probably too high priced a player for a player that was coming down and probably going to end up being third or fourth string at best at this point in time. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to have a player like him as a third or fourth string player, but when you got the salary cap restrictions you have in MLS, you got to be diligent with how you disperse the funds. So I think he probably, the fact that it was a release, not like a trade or anything else, is probably a situation where he probably wanted to kind of find another opportunity, where he might get to play a little bit more. Obviously, he came from LA Galaxy, so
mhm.
maybe he's got roots on the West Coast where he felt like it was time to move closer back to home and things like that. So it's kind of one of those sliding doors ones more than anything else, where it's like, man, if he hadn't got hurt, what could he have been for us? What could he have done for us? We never really got to see the best of him, but that's the unfortunate part of sports sometimes when things like that happen. Didn't ever get to really pan out the way we would have liked to see it.
Yeah. With the next exit is was Nashville SC saying goodbye to the Gaines family. Julian Gaines, the little brother, he's no longer with us. I shouldn't say it like that. It sounds like he died. But at the beginning in like the docu series, the Made in Gold, I believe is what it was called. They were kind of like
Mm-hmm.
hyping him up as this player that's gonna fight for this position and be a big player, which I know he got injured and kind of struggled with. I think it was like his hamstring all season or something along those lines. Is the same injury showing up and up over and over, and I think I don't know if he ever saw the field, but I remember seeing him warm up a few times at Geodis. But he's gone. There's not really much to say, in my opinion. It was one of those bench players that we could have maybe developed, but it just didn't work out, and we decided to go a different direction.
Yeah, yeah, kind of to what you were saying. It kind of seemed like at the start of last season, the kind of plan at right back was Andy Nahar's the veteran, kind of the transitional player that we're bringing in just to kind of be the more veteran starter for at least the start of the season. But the long term plan seemed to be for Gaines to eventually take that role and kind of be the right back of the future. Then he has his injury problems, doesn't get much of a shot, and Andy Nahar comes out and is the best right back in the entire league out of nowhere after a few years, kind of removed from being a star in MLS. So it kind of didn't play out the way it went, but it worked out, unfortunately, pretty good for Nashville SC, not so good for Gaines because, he's out and having to look for a new club now. But we end up with the best right back in the MLS. He's on the still a little bit older, so we'll how many years we gonna get at an Andy Nahar, we don't know, but we'll take it while we can. So, uh, you know, kind of just a missed window of opportunity. It was kind of funny how like we got the two Gaines brothers in, and neither one of them really kind of found the spot here. It never really worked out for both of them.
Um, and then next, this is a guy that like I really didn't see a ton of at all. I think he's more of a Huntsville player. I think he played quite a bit for them, but Maximus Eck, uh, I think that's how you say his last name. But I don't really have anything to say on him. I think he was a younger striker or younger attacking position player that got some shine in Huntsville, but we decided to drop him from our roster. Maybe you have some more input.
Yeah, I think we signed him. I want to say 2 years ago, kind of with an eye, like kind of a developmental type player. Um, but I think he tore his ACL. All these guys are all the injury issues that we're going through right now. Tore his ACL pretty early on in his time. I don't think he ever made it to like the first team. So he's out for pretty much a whole year. Then he came back, I think, last season, and they kind of put him down in Huntsville because he would have taken up an international roster spot to bring him up to Nashville SC's roster. So kept him in Huntsville last year to kind of let him rehab, let him get back up to full speed and see where he was at. And I guess at the end of the day, after that, they just ultimately decided, probably wasn't a spot we wanted to use with him. So moved on there. Yeah, but I think he was one. I don't know that he was ever signed with like any like high expectations. More, it was like just we'll see what he's got kind of developmental type
Mm-hmm.
player that just injuries derailed it and it just never kind of worked out for him.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, like I said, I never really I don't watch the Huntsville games personally. Maybe I should support them. Their space kits are really cool, but that's a side
Yeah.
point. Another kind of older player that I think was I don't know if we could say loved because I think he was kind of a joke of the club that left a joke or meme of the club, but not necessarily a negative way all the time. But Till Bunbury, we declined his contract option. I think everyone could see this coming at some point. It was one of those things just bound to happen with the age thing. And he didn't do much when he came out on the field. But it's another one of those loved guys, but also memed because everyone's like, put Till Bunbury in, he'll score 9 goals and win us the game right now. Uh, but he seemed like a good person. He talked to me one time after a game on the sidelines. So I hate to see him go, but once again, right decision. How long has he been with the club?
I want to say he'd been here feels like 3 seasons. I want to say I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
that's exact because he came in, I believe, around the same time that we still had CJ Sapong. I think he might have just barely predated Sam Surge's arrival, even. So I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember exactly, but yeah, he was probably somebody we probably should have moved on from a little bit sooner. Like
Mm-hmm.
if we had a different second choice striker sometimes last season. But I mean, that's like if it was easy to find second choice strikers that can just score goals off the bench, we'd all be doing great in life. But yeah, just somebody who always worked hard, like you said. He was a nice guy. Seemed like he got along with the rest of the players. Every time you saw like the behind the scenes videos, he seemed like he was one of the kind of glue guys on the roster that everybody kind of
Mm-hmm.
got along with. It seemed like, but I mean, ultimately you're paid for what you do on the field, and just the production just hasn't been there for him for like the last at least 2 seasons. So probably should have moved on a little bit sooner. But yeah, if it was the right time, but
Yeah.
probably the one.
Um,
Well, yeah, I don't want to say I wouldn't miss him because that feels mean, but like, yeah, he's probably the one signing that he's probably the one like big departure like that. I'm kind of like, I think we're okay.
yeah. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. This one honestly surprised me because he'd gotten a decent amount of playing time, sorry, and I don't think he did bad. Which is the departure of Wyatt Meyer. We declined his contract option as well. I thought he seemed to be a promising young player. He was building confidence, sort of the this is again a mean thing to say, but he's kind of like the lesser tier of what Matthew Corcoran is going to be in my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Or that's how we kind of used to and viewed him as a club. But yeah, it's sad to see him go. I was put a lot of I was putting my stock options in him to be a good player. Uh, but I guess he just didn't fit. Wanted more money than we thought. I don't know what happened there, but we let him go.
Yeah, I think my guess would be just it was more of a case of just those kind of bottom of the roster kind of spots seem to get flipped out in and out every single season, no matter what. Like you're always kind of looking to improve those kind of extra players, that kind of third or fourth, string guy. If you can upgrade there and have a better option coming off the bench, you always look toward it. And he's probably a guy where I think in that kind of position, if you think you know what his ceiling is, maybe you're more quick to move away from him and bring in another guy that maybe you think has a higher potential or something like that. Like, you brought up the Matthew Cochran comparison, and I'd say he has a much higher ceiling than Wyatt Meyer. So it's kind of probably, looking at the situation like, hey, this guy was pretty solid. He's decent enough, but, there's probably, 100 Wyatt Myers out there that we could go get. Maybe we can find something better type of situation, be my guess. It's just kind of weird. Like, it's one of the things that's like, I don't know how much longer MLS will really do it because like it just like feels like outdated with how different soccer is now than the rest of sports. But he was like a super draft pick, so we drafted him out of
Mm-hmm.
college. So he was actually kind of not coming up at the academy, not brought in as a free agent. So a lot of the college players kind of aren't necessarily the top of the tier young players like they used to be because so many more players are going through the academy systems now and getting into like
Yeah.
we've got teenagers now, they're becoming world superstars in soccer. So college soccer isn't what it once was. All we did that sign a new guy from the collegiate ranks, but his story seems like a little bit unique and a little different from some other college players from the way I've read about him so far. But yeah, I liked Wyatt Meyer. I thought he did really well. He stepped in, some key moments, the goal against Orlando in the Open Cup,
Yeah.
starting those first couple games when we had a lot of injuries in midfield. But yeah, I think it's probably more of a case of, you kind of know what his ceiling is. And so maybe it's a
Mm-hmm.
spot where you're like kind of the 24th, 25th guy in the roster. Maybe we just swap that out for somebody else and see if we can find somebody with a little more potential, probably type of situation.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, that makes the most sense to me. And then here, this is a guy that I really don't have much to say. Older guy that I don't know if he ever played besides maybe a few Open Cup games, but Tate Schmidt, he would fill in sometimes for Daniel Lovitz at left back. Uh, just didn't really do much. Makes sense to get rid of him. I felt like that was sort of an emergency get in case something happened. And we used him a few times, and I'm pretty sure the times that we used him, they were attacking that side, and it didn't go well.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that he's gone. Wish him the best.
Yeah, I think he got signed when Taylor Washington got hurt, so he kind of became the emergency replacement backup left back, like you were kind of saying. And but ultimately, like I think there's going to be rarely a time where we don't want Dan Lovitz on the field. So especially if like you know Taylor Washington was one thing, but I think Schmidt was just kind of like, hey, we got to get somebody in here because we were down a left back type thing. So yeah, it seemed like I was always just kind of a filler for the season just to get us through, just in break glass in case of emergency type of player, but really not one we really expected much of or had too high hopes for.
I think we used Josh Bauer in the fullback positions more
Yeah.
than we did Tate Schmidt. And
Yep.
then the last and most recent departure that I was surprised by, not in terms of him going, but in terms of the value that we got out of him was Johnny Perez. He went to
Mm.
Chivas, his hometown or childhood team, whatever you want to call it. He was pushing for the move, so I'm glad that he got it. That's awesome for him that he gets to go play with his club. But it was a club record fee that we got for him, and I was kind of surprised by it because I feel like he wasn't really. Um, it didn't seem like he would get that headline. I know it's probably different because it's a different league that has different amounts of money than MLS, so we might see different. But I was just surprised for what we could get out of him. What did you think about that move?
Yeah, it was interesting. Obviously, like to basically double your investment. Because I think we paid LA Galaxy like 1.5 mil to get him, and Chivas just paid, I think, $3 million to get him. So we basically doubled our investment in less than a year on him. And, unfortunately, that's kind of the nature of MLS, especially the smaller market teams, is that you got to try to make some profits on some players here and there. And so to be able to do that, set a club record fee for a guy who hadn't really, I don't think fully broke out the way, we kind of maybe thought he might. I think that's a pretty good bit of business by Nashville SC. But yeah, to your point, it was a little bit, because I think initially everybody was kind of like, I don't know why Nashville's doing this deal. I don't know why Nashville's doing this deal, because I don't think anybody expected us to get the fee we got for him. I believe Valère, one of our main media guys that covers the team, was really negative on the move, and then the fee came out and he was like, okay, never mind, my bad, this is a good move by Nashville SC, because nobody really expected him to get that much of a deal. But it's to your point, maybe from his history, growing up in Mexico, having been around the national teams there, maybe there's stuff they've seen just in his body of work that they think maybe the goals, the assists, productivity hasn't been there yet, but they're seeing things that long term there's more to come from him. And I think it was, in terms of what he probably was going to end up being for us this season, it's even a better deal, because bringing in, we'll get to it I'm sure in a bit, Christian Espinoza, not going to be as much rotation on the wings, I would say, this season as there would be next season, because I think you're looking at Hani Mukhtar, you're looking at Christian Espinoza, you're looking at Sam Surge in those front three attacking positions. Those guys are going to play every match they're healthy for. So last year, where we were kind of rotating Schaffelberg one game, Perez one game, Kassam one game, Wheel kind of most games, I don't think we're going to see as much switching and changing on the wings with the new signings we've brought in. So he probably was much like, Schaffelberg at this point, and Tyler Boyd, like we talked about, fighting for being maybe the third or fourth string midfielder. So you get a club record fee for a guy that might be your third or fourth string winger at this point. That's a pretty good business move for Nashville SC. Gonna feel bad if he breaks out and hits the ceiling, the potential we thought he might have had when he goes down to Chivas and scores 12 goals next season or something like that. But I think we'll be okay. I'm pretty happy with the business we've done in the offseason, and I think that was a pretty good sale for Nashville SC in the terms of the return on investment.
Yeah, I would agree in terms of the return on investment. I think it is a good play. And then the next two guys is the guys who are kind of round door, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. The main was everyone. We almost had a parade in the city of Nashville when Joe Willis was not his option was not exercised. Everyone was so happy and just ecstatic. And then a few days later, I think we re-signed him, and it was it was chaos in all the discords and the Facebook groups. I think his role is going to be the veteran, goalkeeper, second string coming off the bench. I don't think he's going to be. I think we're going to move towards Shawaki being our main guy. But that was just a funny thing to witness, because everyone in the Discord is obviously their opinions are very loud because it's Discord. So there's this one guy in there who just absolutely hates Joe Willis with everything in him, and it's just funny watching his reactions to both news.
Yeah, I definitely was kind of getting into the mode where it was probably time for us to start thinking about a different keeper for the long-term future of the club. If he had come back and if he somehow ends up being our starter again this year, I won't be, too hurt about it. I think, he's not as mobile or as athletic as you kind of want your modern keepers to be, not as good with his feet as, keepers kind of need to be nowadays. But I mean, good shot stopper, maybe getting a little slow on that end too, on that side. But kind of funny. I at the time when they announced they'd re-signed him, I was kind of wondering when did Nashville SC know they were going to resign him? Because I'm sure it was probably a deal where they're going to decline the contract because if they're bringing him back, it's going to be for less money. So did they already know he was coming back and they'd already agreed on the new trip? But there was a weird 3 days because either half the club's fans were happy and the other half were sad, and then 2-3 days later, everybody's like, oh well, he's just back. It happened all along. But and I'm sure the next one you're talking about is Brian Acosta, which is kind of the same. It's oh, I guess we're just both cases. It seemed like good depth pieces, good guys to have on the roster, got him back on cheaper deals. So cool.
Yeah. I think with the Joe Willis thing, I mean, I don't know if you've been keeping up with the preseason scores and stuff, is we've been giving up, at least 1 to 2 goals per game. And that's not completely on the goalkeeper, but I think we're going to see the first time that Schwake is stepping into this role of the main guy in the goalkeeper net. And so I think we're going to give up quite a few goals this season, maybe even more than Joe Willis did, just letting this guy figure out who he is. But good news is we probably have one of the strongest attacks in the league. So if we go down a goal, it's not going to be the end of the world. I think that the team has really put Schwake in a good position to be able to make mistakes and it, like I said, not be the end of the world. And also let our offense shine by being the guys that helps the comeback. I'm just really excited for that, and I think Willis will be good for locker room. He knows Nashville, he knows the club, the fans know him, and him and Schwake have obviously been together for a year now, I think, a year or two. So he'll be a good vet to have in the locker room. And then obviously you kind of foreshadowed Brian Acosta. He's a midfield, defensive midfield guy that didn't really do an awful lot last season, but I think he kind of came back as more of a glue guy. I know him and Andy Nahar are always on TikTok live together. So it may have been one of those things that we wanted to keep Nahar happy. So we signed his bestie. Um, I really don't have much to say on the Acosta thing because I didn't watch him too closely because he kind of was boring to me.
Yeah, yeah, he's not going to be a player that's going to light the world on fire. He's just a kind of a solid grinder, a six defensive midfielder type of player. The thing, the most positive thing I could say for him is he's essentially got the role now that Brian Anunga used to have of kind of being the
Mm-hmm.
backup emergency kind of midfielder guy that I outside of maybe Teal Bunbury, I don't know if there's anybody other than Brian Anunga that like created more headaches and anger with Nashville SC fans when they got sent into games. And when Brian Acosta comes into matches, I don't feel nearly as angry as I did when Brian Anunga was coming in. So to me, that must mean he must be some type of upgrade on that role. So I'll take it if that's his. If we were like trying to make him like first choice starter, like hanging our hats on him as being a key guy, that'd be one thing. But I think he's a pretty solid guy to kind of have in the mix as just like a depth piece.
Yeah, I think so too. I forgot about Nunga, but
Yeah,
uh,
I wish I
new
could have.
guy that I know. I had messaged him a little tidbit. I messaged him on Instagram because we had met at some point, and I forgot what exactly he said, but he's like, "Yeah, Nashville seemed to be doing good." And I sent it to the Discord, and everyone's like, "This guy's pissing me off, dude. He goes to another team, and now we're doing good." Uh,
Yeah.
but anyways, going back into some of the new arrivals, uh, hopefully you can help me with some of these guys that are coming from other MLS teams. Thomas Williams is one that we picked up. We signed him from Orlando. He was on the under 17, under 19, under 20, and under 23 U.S. international. And he has 99 pro appearances at the age of 21. There's some little facts for you guys, but do you have any thoughts on this signing?
Yeah, from what I've read, it just seems like he's probably planned to be a depth piece, might kind of split time between Nashville SC and Huntsville. That kind of said he's probably going to be competing with Chris Applewhite for kind of the fourth center back spot. But people seem to have, high hopes for him because he comes from Orlando. Like everything I've read is that their academy is one of the best academies in the league. But the problem they have is they can't figure out how to get their academy players to translate to be into the senior team. So like they have a lot of academy players end up going elsewhere and blossoming, but they can't get them to seem to get into their first team in Orlando. So I think he's a guy that's brought in for the potential. Didn't have to give up much to get him, and like I said, he's probably looking at being either the fourth or fifth center back in the rotation. So not somebody you're expecting to see too much of this year, I would say.
Yeah, I will just trust whatever you're saying on that. We've also signed 21-year-old Costa Rican forward Warren Madrigal, however you say it. I'm reading the National Post right now. So the transfer from Deportivo Saprissa. Uh, we have him through the 28-29 season, option for 29-30. 21-year-old forward. I assume he's just going to be a depth piece that hopefully we can build up. Do you have any more thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of weirdly excited about him. I think
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of earmarked to be kind of the Teal Bunbury replacement as like the backup striker, but he can also play on the wing. So I think he gives us some depth there as well. I think we're looking at him and Wubin Pescius, who's been waiting for his chance to come into the
Mm-hmm.
first team to kind of come in and be that second, third striker that can maybe give us a few goals off the bench. And I mean, um, club club so far hasn't done a whole lot at like a high level. I think he was on loan in Spain at Valencia's B team for a little while, but I mean, he's already got quite a few appearances for the Costa Rica senior national team and quite a few goals for them. And I mean, they're not like, a world power or anything like that, but they're also pretty, for our region, CONCACAF, they're a pretty solid team. So to have broken through there and be kind of a regular for them at 21, he's got to have a little something to his game. So I'm kind of excited to see what he has. I'm definitely, to the comment about backups being more exciting than previous backups. I think the first time he comes on the field, it's going to be a lot more exciting for the fan base than whenever Teal Bunbury was being brought on. So I'm interested to see what he's got because I mean, it just seems like he's got to have something to be able to kind of already be breaking into his senior national team the way he has so far. So he's one of the of the kind of not marquee names that we signed. He's one I'm pretty excited to see what he does this year.
Cool. Another midfield addition. We got Shakir Muhammad from Orlando City. I think we just traded him basically for a like a third round pick in the MLS Super Draft, which, like we mentioned before, is basically nothing in terms of soccer for us. So I don't know much about him. He's from Ghana. That's all I know. What was your thoughts on that pickup?
Yeah, sounds like a kind of more depth, kind of filling in some of the gaps where we've let some players go. A couple reports that he looked pretty good in preseason, but still not like pushing his way into the starting lineup good. But it just sounds like he's probably going to be a depth piece, kind of giving us a little extra something there. So we'll see. He's kind of a mystery to me. A lot of these players that we signed from like him and Williams didn't play too much for like I think the first teams. I think they were more like playing in those teams equivalent of like what they have for Huntsville. So we'll see. I don't know how much he breaks into the National SC first team this year, but sounded like he had a good preseason from a few things I've read. So we'll see.
Cool. And then before we get to the big guy, or well, two of the big guys, we signed defender Isaiah LaFleur. We got him from Philadelphia Union, and then I'm not sure what we traded for him. Defender, I don't really know much about him. Orlando City guy. Do you have any?
No, I think we just we let with Washington leaving and Gaines leaving, we needed some depth at fullback. So I think that's kind of what he was brought
Yeah.
in to be, kind of a similar to what Gaines was, a young player who maybe can give you something, but you're kind of just probably hoping you actually don't have to play him that much because if he does play, that means something's gone wrong with the starters or something like that. So I think he's mostly been brought in as kind of a depth piece more than anything, and just kind of when we signed him, I think it was kind of also one of those maybe we don't know what else we're going to be able to get type signings, so let's make sure we get at least something because I think today we just announced we're signing a wing back from Seattle who can kind of play left back or right back, and people seem pretty excited about him. I think his name is like Whiting or Whitting or something like that, but seems like the reports are he's like actually borderline starting caliber player. So I think maybe LaFleur was signed early in the offseason when it's kind of like, well, we need to sign a fullback, but let's keep looking and seeing what's out there. Maybe something else come along later, and we can just push him down to Huntsville or something like that. I don't think there's he's a player they expect to be a key role player, but young player that maybe could develop into something.
Cool. And then there's also one more player that I forgot about because it's pretty recent. I think it was like 4 days ago. He'd been playing with us in the preseason. I don't think he'd quite earned a roster spot yet, but the Canadian midfielder Charles Emile Brunet.
Yeah.
We signed him. I feel like he's one that I heard some buzz around in our preseason games of him doing pretty good. Do you have any more details about that signing?
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like he was one of kind of the standouts that kind of caught everybody's eye in preseason, and he was I think a third round super draft pick for us, which is third round draft pick in MLS is almost nothing really. So he did good to get himself onto the team, showed himself. I think from what I've read, I might have this mixed up with somebody else, but I think he came up through the academy in FC Montreal or the Club Montreal or whatever they call themselves these days. But then ended up having like several injuries that kind of derailed his like career in his youth days. And he was somebody that they thought might go straight into the pros, and kind of that's how he ended up in college. Was that he had a bunch of injury problems when he was younger, and so he went to college and kind of reset his career that way. But yeah, everybody seemed pretty excited about him. Seemed to think that he has a pretty good chance of, probably not being a starter, but being like, kind of that next guy in line behind Tag Seth and, Yazbek. He seems like he's that type of player, the kind of all action, box to box, cover every blade of grass type central midfielder. So if he can come in and, help those two guys out, because, I think both of them seem to get a little tired as the season went on, which you can understand as much running as they do, so to have an extra body, an extra player that can kind of take on some of that load would be a huge get, especially like to come from a third round draft pick, which is almost like a throwaway in the MLS type things. If you get something out of somebody like that, that would be huge. But yeah, like you said, it seemed like he was a player that a lot of people were excited about based on how he performed in preseason.
Okay, so we kind of got through some of the normal run and go depth pieces. We're getting on to our two big guys. The first one announced was Ghanaian center back, 24-year-old Maxwell Waletsky. I am so excited for this. This is people are deeming him, if you aren't in any other circles, people are deeming him as like the Walker replacement.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm super excited about his energy, his personality. He does a lot of he has a pretty big charity over in Ghana that he does where it's basically allowing women in soccer to wear hijabs, and it's like a fundraiser. So he seems like a dude who has good morals, has principle, and I think that's a good piece to add to our roster. That, like you mentioned earlier, seems to be like mostly good guys. So I'm super excited to see what he does on and off the field for Nashville. And he seemed to be pretty electric over there. I saw whenever the trade first happened, I saw a lot of fans of that league. Um, they were upset to see him go, and they were, telling us that we got a good guy and a good player. So I'm super excited for his addition.
Yeah, outside of like a few little like YouTube highlight reels, haven't like really seen too much of him play him, but like everything you read, everything you hear about him, it sounds like it's got the potential to be another home run signing for Mike Jacobs. I mean, he was I think best 11 the last two seasons in the Norwegian League. And I mean, the last two guys we signed from the Norwegian League, Patrick Yazbek and Eddie Tagseth, worked out pretty good. So, I mean, if you're the best 11 from that league, and these guys have come from that league, it seems like Mike Jacobs has got his finger on the pulse of what's good in that league. And, to be a kind of Ghana national team player is a pretty solid deal, too, because, I mean, they're at the international level, they're one of the better teams out of Africa. So to be able to get a guy who's playing at that level, he might be here 1 or 2 years and then get a big deal in Europe, but we'll be happy with the 1 or 2 years he's here. But he seems like from a profile, he's the type of player that would lead you to move away from a Walker Zimmerman, where he's a little bit more pacey, can get around the field a little bit more, a little bit better of a passer. So I think he can blend right in. I think it's really, we've kind of had this from day one, but I mean, we continue to have like really solid depth at center back, having him, Jason Palacios, Jack Maher, and then, maybe Chris Applewhite or Williams as the next center backs in line. I mean, that's as solid a group as, you'll find. I mean, I don't know. We might have the best center backs, and we might have the best forwards in the entire league outside of maybe Inter Miami, of course. But to build the back and build the attack, I think we've done some good business this offseason, and he's got the potential to be a huge development, huge signing for us, I think.
Yeah. Another huge signing for us was the one that everyone's talking about. Everyone is excited to see, Christian Espinoza. He took up our third DP spot, 30-year-old winger from Argentina. I'm going to go through some of his accolades real quick just so everyone kind of gets a feel. 36 goals, 70 assists, and 218 MLS appearances. He led the MLS in key passes in 2025 as 115, two-time MLS All-Star, 2018 Argentinian League Championship, 2015 Under 20 South American Championship winner, 2014-15 Super Copa Argentina winner, and 2013-14 Argentinian Cup winner. Um, so this was our front office getting the best guy in free agency that we could. This was showing everyone that we want to win. A lot of people thought that we were changing our roster setup from the moving away from the 3DP kind of setup to the under 22, I think is what it is. Moving that, obviously with the signing it didn't, but with a guy like him in free agency, from what everyone is saying, it seems like you have to go get him. Which is the are you aware of like the story of what happened in with Seattle with his departure?
Yeah, where they accidentally didn't file the paperwork. Just they were going to pick up his contract option and somehow managed to either misfile the paperwork or file it too late, and so he hit free agency uh, by accident, essentially. Which it also kind of tells you what maybe he thought about San Jose, because you think if he wanted to stay in San Jose, he would just be like, oh, you guys filed the paperwork wrong, no big deal. We'll get a new contract worked out, we'll sign it. But they messed up the paperwork, and he's like, peace, I'm out, see you guys later. Like, clearly he wanted to get out there, and that's one of the things I think is maybe the most exciting thing about signing him is, like, you just ran through everything he's done. He's done all that in San Jose, which has been one of the worst teams in the league for like the entire time he was there. So drop him into our team now, where he's playing with Hani Mukhtar, where he's playing with Sam Surridge. I would expect, it's going to only get better, because if you're getting the most assists in the league when you're passing to, maybe not the best players, and all of a sudden now you get to pass to Hani Mukhtar and Sam Surridge, how many more goals are you going to create in that regard? So I'm pretty excited about him, just from that perspective of seeing, like, the production he had in a bad team. What's he going to do when he comes to a good team? But the thing is almost is more exciting about this is just the fact that we got him, as a club.
Yeah.
Like, what does this mean for us going forward? Because I think, like, in the off-season kind of preview stuff that people put out, he was the big free agent thing. And I don't think I read one single time where anybody predicted he was going to come here. It was all LA Galaxy or LAFC, or, I don't even know if Miami could have figured out a way to make it work, but probably Miami, somebody I'm sure predicted. But like, nobody was like, oh, top free agent will go to Nashville, and we got him. So, I mean, that shows you that, like, Mike Jacobs has got a good sales pitch. Something about what we're doing here is attractive to top tier players. So, that bodes well for the future, because that was, always one of my concerns when we first got an MLS team, is like, how are we going to sell Nashville to like top, high level soccer players, like, American based players, especially now as Nashville's grown as a city, like, might see Nashville, go, oh, I'd like to play there. But you grab a guy from like Argentina and go like, hey, do you want to go play in Nashville? He's probably gonna be like, what is a Nashville? I don't know what that means. But, obviously we're doing something right in terms of getting our brand out there, in terms of making ourselves an attractive destination for top tier players, because to beat out some of the more, traditionally big clubs, to get a guy like that's huge for what we can potentially do going forward in terms of being able to attract more players of his level.
Yeah, and that's actually something I wanted to bring up naturally sometime in the pod, was that in some of the earlier press stuff that's come out during like the preseason training camps and stuff. I believe it's 615 Soccer's where I saw the video. Jack Mayer was talking about, whenever he's having the meeting with like the players union and stuff, that Nashville is a huge topic now. It's a destination that players are talking about, that players are interested. We have a good team. Seems like we have a good coaching staff, and it is a good city to live in. It may be a more quiet city than somewhere like Miami or something, but Nashville is a relatively, safe and good city. So I can see why it being a good destination now that we have a capable soccer team. So that's just a cool trend that I want to bring up, is that Nashville is being talked about within the MLS, and we're not being slept on as much as we used to. The Espinoza thing, I'm super excited for. I think just the story of the person in their front office forgetting to trigger the option is ridiculous. It's funny, and I'm excited to see what he does.
It brings back kind of old memories for Manchester United fan like myself. This has to be 10, 15 years. No, not 15, but at least 10 years ago now. At this point in time, we had a goalkeeper, David De Gea, who was in his prime. He was one of the best goalkeepers in the world. He was Spanish. So Real
Mhm.
Madrid wanted him, like, because, he's the best Spanish goalkeeper. The best team in Spain wants the best Spanish goalkeeper. So the deal had been agreed. We kind of unwillingly finally caved in and said, hey, he wants to go. You want him. Deal was agreed upon, and then some weird fax machine shenanigans went through, and paperwork didn't get faxed into FIFA in time, and didn't get faxed from club to club in time, and the deal fell through at the last minute. He ended up playing for Manchester United for like 10 more years after that because Real Madrid moved on and found a different goalkeeper instead. But it was the wonkiness of paperwork not being filed correctly and what can
Yeah.
happen in the transfer market. It's like the silliest thing in the world because, like, you play FIFA or whatever and you just get used to going, I want this player, click, 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 and it's over. Like in the real world,
Yeah.
like paperwork has to be filed and things have to be submitted and lease and all that stuff. It's just it's weird how like sometimes that gets more complicated than we really think it is, kind of looking from the outside.
Um, but yeah, I think he's going to be a good pickup. I mean, I think this makes our offense super dangerous. Uh, as an NBA guy, great players don't always make a great team, so there's still work that needs to
Yeah.
be done. We could have the best roster and it just not mesh well. So I'm not getting my hopes too up, but I'm assuming that we'll be able to produce. Just before we move on, I just want to go through some quick contract extensions that we did. We extended Andy Nahar, which I think we're just kind of playing him like every year by 2 years as he ages. Palacios we extended. That makes sense. Eddie extended, of course. And then I think today it was announced that BJ Callahan as the coach was extended, which is an obvious given. I think those all make sense. I am, I think we should ride those players out until we can't because they've all done pretty great for us. You can argue Palacios had some iffy moments, but I think those all make sense to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, and to the same point as kind of the Christian Espinosa signing, it's kind of a sign that the team, the players, the front office, everybody kind of sees this as the opportunity, the window to win some more hardware. And so that's all. Let's lock up the core. Let's make sure we have this team solid together and, really go for it here over the next year or two and see what we can do.
Um, Looking forward to the future. First off, we have our kit for next season. Uh, this has been probably one of the most controversial that I've seen as my time as a fan. I wanted to know your thoughts on it because we haven't even talked about what thought about to each other. So, what do you think about the new kit?
Yeah, I've softened on it a little bit when it first got leaked
Mm-hmm.
out with the Predators player Philippe Forsberg wearing it in like a pregame photo shoot. I was like, oh, it just looked like a rec jersey, like that they throw you when you go out on the field, like just, oh, hey, throw this on, so you're on the yellow team today type of jersey.
Mm-hmm.
Which usually the first image of most of the time when there's a leak of a jersey or something like that, it always ends up looking better than that first one anyway. But just that first one was just bad. I even like posted like a TikTok where I was like, thought it was a conspiracy theory that they leaked it to like keep fans from pre-ordering it and then being pissed when they saw what it actually was, because that was when they were doing the sight unseen. You could pre-order the jersey sight unseen. So I think that was like, oh, I think they sneakily leaked it because they knew it was bad or something like that. But once it fully came out, you saw all the extra like kind of designs and wrinkles and stuff. Is a much better looking jersey than it initially did. And I don't even like hate just kind of classic, simple, clean jerseys. I like those. I think sometimes you can go too far and do too much with jerseys and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And the home jersey is always going to be the one that's going to be a little bit more,
Yeah.
normal, because there's only so much you can do with a yellow jersey. The away one, you can go crazy every couple of years and do a different color than you usually do, and do some weird sashes or stripes or stuff like that. But the home jersey is almost always going to be some variation of a plain yellow jersey. So it's grown on me. I like it better now that I've seen the full design and stuff like that. But the placement of the centralized crest, I hate it. I don't like it at all. It would almost be okay if it wasn't for the fact that the Adidas logo just seems to dwarf our logo. Like, it's the craziest thing in the world. Like, I like, somebody had posted in response to something I was tweeting about it, like talking about all these other teams that have had the centralized thing. And it's, oh, look at all these other teams. And like almost everyone he named was, weirdly, when I thought about it, I was like, we're Nike teams where it's just a little swoosh. It doesn't take up
Mm-hmm.
that much space. But
Yeah.
the huge Adidas 3 lines right above the National Sea crest,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like the crest just gets swallowed up between that and the sponsor. I think I'm going to go, me and some friends are going to go to the watch party at Fog Street tomorrow night where they're doing the pop up and selling the jersey. So I'll actually get to see it like physically person tomorrow for the first time, so I'll probably have an even different opinion about it by the time I actually see it in person. The third opinion, the leak opinion, the full picture opinion, and now the in-person opinion will be coming soon for me. But yeah, it's grown on me, but I don't know if it's one I'm going to buy or not, just because the placement of the logos just look so wonky to me. But I think I said in a tweet later, I was like, if it weren't for the logo placement, it almost would be the best home jersey we've had, just because it just looks like a cool classic kind of vintage soccer jersey. The like kind of light blue and the collars are kind of neat, kind of wrinkle, and like the stripes on the shoulder. It looks pretty good otherwise, but logo placement, it just drives me crazy.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think almost every leak that I've seen, I've not liked, and then it comes out with like the full press drop with the club, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. Yeah, not going to be one that I rush to buy. I'll probably get it whenever it drops like $50 or something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think the logo problem is the Adidas is you know, it's a horizontal logo and ours is vertical, and like naturally that is, I think it is still bigger, but I think it also your eye plays tricks on you.
Could be.
But yeah, it's unique. A primary kit is always going to be mainly yellow and simplistic. That's just the name of the game. uh yeah, looking forward to next season. I mean, I think, would you say, because in my head I think we have our strongest roster ever. What would you think to that claim?
Yeah, no doubt. On paper, it's the best roster we've ever put together for Nashville SC. I mean, the other thing I was thinking about with Christian Espinoza that's kind of funny was like for the first like 2-3 years of Nashville SC, the big thing we always said was like, oh, we just need to sign a second goal scorer, somebody like, to take the pressure off Hani Mukhtar. And then we got Sam and he comes in. And then last year, about halfway through the season, all of a sudden it was like, oh, we just need that third goal scorer to like score more goals behind Hani and Sam. It's like we're good. We got this guy, and next year we're going to start talking about we just need that fourth goal scorer to score goals behind these. But yeah, I think if everybody's healthy, if like the new signings hit the ground running the way we expect them to, there's no reason we shouldn't be competing for the top of the East, if not the top of the entire league. Obviously, Miami just continues to load up, and it's like a race to keep up with them for the most part. But the kind of teams that were kind of ahead of us last season, the Cincinnatis and other teams like that, kind of held firm. They didn't really do too much, but the teams that were kind of in that range that we were in, it seems like there was a lot of movement from like that kind of 5 through 12 in the East. So I think the East is going to be just a gauntlet again. It's going to be really tough, but yeah, we've got, the best, outside of probably Miami on paper, the best attack in the league. We've got the best center back groups in the league. Probably still maybe need at least one more signing of just at least a depth piece in central midfield. But I mean, otherwise, yeah, it's definitely seems like it's got the chance to be the best team we've ever had.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Obviously, we can't really set up realistic expectations until probably like 5 to 7 games in. We'll probably understand about what we're going to get for the season. But as long as everything works out as it's supposed to on paper, I think we have a really, really strong chance at competing for whatever this year. Obviously, I think uh, I think our history with Miami will probably keep on the trend that it is. Unfortunately, I think guessing anything else. Go ahead.
We've already got one. As I we've already got one due date with them coming up. It looks like if everything goes the way it should with Ottawa.
Yeah. That's that's the most, like, I think I was one of the like most pissed off I've been in recent years when I found out that second round was Miami for that. I think it'd be foolish to say that it goes any other way. Obviously, I hope it doesn't, but I think we're going to have a great season. I hope that Sam Surge will keep doing what he did last season and win a Golden Boot. I think that'd be cool. Or one of our guys get MLS MVP even. That would be super cool. It depends on when Messi decides to stop producing, because I feel like we've been pretty neck and neck with him a lot in the last few years in terms of like our players winning individual awards, and when it comes to playoff format, regular season games, I'm okay with losing. It happens, but man, that playing them in the last season match and then going straight to playing them in the playoff, it sucked. But I think we're gonna have another great fun season to watch, and hopefully everyone stays healthy. And yeah,
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Actually, I think it's gonna be a really interesting season when it comes to the messy of it all, because I think it's gonna be a interesting wrinkle. We've got the World Cup dropping smack dab in the middle of the MLS season this year, and so it almost maybe it might be better to catch Messi and Co. a little bit earlier in the season, because he might have his eye, towards making sure he's still fit and ready for the World Cup. So if he's got, like, I know he's at least this last week there was a couple practices he missed with a hamstring injury. So if he's not feeling 100% fit, I don't know if he's going to push it this early in the season with the World Cup looming. So maybe we catch a not full strength Miami. I don't know. We're probably looking ahead. We got to respect Ottawa. Respect Ottawa. We still got to play
yeah,
Ottawa.
yeah.
Don't look ahead of Don't look past Ottawa. That's my advice for the first half of the first week of the season, at least.
Hopefully we get it done, but it'll be a nice little stage for Ottawa to compete on. Um, Matt, I know later in the NFL season last year you stopped doing, or well, you said you're stopping doing Titans blogs, but then you got the bouginess of it, and you got some luxury seats, and the vlogs continued. So for this year in your personal YouTube channel over on Uncle Mad on YouTube, what can we expect for game day vlogs and such? Are we still doing them for Nashville SC? What's the plan?
Yeah, definitely we'll be keeping them up for National SC this year. Hopefully they'll do well enough to make me feel like I should keep doing them, because that's ultimately what happened with the Titans. Was like, just like it was like a case of like the only people who could possibly want to watch the Titans game day vlogs are just like sickos who just want to live in the misery or something like that, like just sadomasochist or something like that. But like hopefully Nashville SC will be more pleasant, more fun, more entertaining. So yeah, definitely at least start of the season, especially because I'm sure there'll be some new things at Geodis Park, some fun new things to document. So we'll have some videos. I know we got at least 2 games coming up. We got home game there Saturday, and then we turn right back around, have the second leg at home a week from tomorrow with Ottawa. So a few games right out of the gate coming to Geodis Park. So should be fun.
Cool. And then if you want to plug that, it's just Uncle Mad across all platforms. That's where the viewers can find you.
Uncle Mad with 2 D's. Anywhere, that's pretty much everywhere. Sometimes there's an underscore, sometimes there's not.
Cool. In terms of my personal YouTube channel, I mean, it's just right now it's kind of hard for me to get out to National SC games. Whenever I go, I will vlog, but I'm looking to shift that. I've been doing a TikTok page for a while now. Dylan Tries to Read, where I document my adult process of becoming a reader as an adult, and I've been enjoying that quite a bit. So I may kind of switch that to YouTube, where I can be more consistent. I'll keep the podcast uploaded, but Dylan Tries to Read on TikTok. Is that Project Hail Mary? I saw 3 letters.
I was going to say, you've actually inspired me a little bit. I'm going to try to read more myself. Like, I've started to pick up some books for my next tropical vacation with my wife, and one of the ones I've just acquired is Project Hail Mary, because the movie's coming out. I've heard this book is awesome. I've heard the movie's supposed to be awesome, so I was like, we're going to add this to the Uncle Mad book list for my upcoming vacation. So thank you for the inspiration to try to do a little bit more reading.
Of course, that's the whole goal. And Project Hail Mary is one of the, I think it's probably the second or third book that I actually read as an adult, and it was phenomenal. I can't wait for the movie. It's very sciencey. I will warn you ahead of time that there's some science in there that kind of drags on, but that's so good. I'm glad you picked that up. That's awesome. We'll have to do a pod update once you finish it.
Will do.
But I think that concludes this week's episode. Thank you everyone for staying tuned in, even though we fell off a little bit. We're back, we're stronger, and make sure to keep out on our personal avenues, and make sure to check us out here. Give us a follow on Twitter. Go like and follow on Spotify. Subscribe on YouTube if you haven't.